What?
You got to get comfortable.
Are you comfortable?
Are you?
Are we comfortable?
I am.
Are you comfortable with talking live on a podcast?
Are we live?
We're live.
We are live.
Yeah, I like
How's
these
it going?
intros. These intros better where I have no idea when I'm going to press the record button.
You just go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the best ones to start.
To infinity and beyond. Is that Buzz Lightyear?
That is Buzz Lightyear Toy Story. It's been a minute.
That's a life motto. Okay. This Free Minds podcast.
Podcast 7.
Free.
Season 2, episode 8.
Ocho. Oh, we are the Ocho.
The Ocho.
Oh,
ESPN. The
maybe
Ocho.
some people get that reference. Maybe. I don't know how old
Probably
that is.
not.
Dodge the ball. Stuff. So, what? I mean, there's a book, and it's on Amazon. It's called Evergreen. We're not the mask we wear. We're the light that shines through. It's by me. I'm Trey Jackson, and I guess I'm an author. I have that label now, right?
Yes, you do. An author from Atlanta.
Atlanta, Georgia. Who are you, by the way? Should we say?
My name is John Nichols.
Yeah, you nickels and dimes people.
I haven't heard that one before.
No, he hasn't. I probably said it on the podcast last week, honestly.
I probably say it every week.
So yeah, that's on Amazon. You can grab that there. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from it. People have said it really helps them kind of process either what happened in childhood and why we're still engaged in some patterns that clearly no longer serve us and hold us back from like our full potential in life. But it also helps a lot with like, hey, if you think you're having a quote unquote spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call that, and you need help understanding how to make it more human and tangible so that you can use it to your benefit in life. A lot of that's in the book too. And we talked about it in at the episode, season 2, episode 1. So if you want more information on the book, that's in that episode.
If you have read it, make sure to leave a review on Amazon.
Yeah. Don't leave a review on Reddit.
Leave it on Amazon.
Yeah. Reddit. Okay. And then maybe I'll stop saying at some point. So we have my second book, which is going to be on hold for a little bit. Just some stuff going on with the publisher. So that's on hold. The third book is still going along. That's still happening.
Still writing that?
Yeah. I think I can say the title now. My agent didn't want me to say the title for a while because he was scared somebody was going to take it. But like I have the domain name. I mean, it's my book. So It's called The Alchemist Compass. We already talked about. We've been trying to brand it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like if people know, a lot of people that listen to this know what oracle cards are. It's not like tarot cards, but it's like oracle cards, which are basically cards you pull each day. You're like, what's going to happen today? What can I prepare for? How can I help myself? You pull out a card, you look at it, and you're like, okay, this is how it looks like the day is going to go.
Can I see it, please?
This is a tarot card, but
okay.
the idea is still there. So it might say, take a leap of faith, but it'll be more convoluted than that. And I think, maybe towards the end of the season, we might give an example of like one of the cards looks like.
Yeah.
But basically the way I see it and what we're going to talk about a little bit today on this episode is, what does being psychic really mean? What's it like to go from that transition of being a totally normal human, quote unquote normal human that doesn't believe in any of this stuff into a realm where I guess kind of anything is possible. And in theory, the universe is connected to these cards. So of course you would pull out the right card.
Yeah.
It's always going to be the one you need, in the same way that a coincidence that happens where you bump into somebody and they said something to you that made you do something that led you to a job or whatever, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I totally believe in coincidences. A lot of people call them synchronicities, but I think there's a rhythm to the universe. I think everything is connected and everything fits together like a puzzle the way it should based on our decisions, what we're doing in each moment.
Makes sense. There's a reason why we ran into each other.
Right. Yeah. You know, you reached out to me at that time and we bumped into you and we're like, oh, we're both doing like the same stuff.
Right at the right time, man.
Isn't that weird, right?
That is funny how the universe works.
So I fully trusted the book, even back to the book, book 1, book 2, book 3. A lot of them are about learning about how to trust your higher self, whatever you want to call it. But really, you're trusting yourself. You're trusting the way you feel about things, your decision making, not overthinking, because that usually impedes us. So yeah, all of that's been happening. Those 3 books are in flow, or 1's out, 2 are in flux. I think the 3rd book should be up by Depends on the artist because the artist has to draw stuff.
Ooh, there's
But
going to be an artist in it.
yeah, they got to draw the
Some drawings.
pictures. Yeah,
I'm excited.
they'll be cute.
Yeah.
Or whatever. They'll be meaningful. The writing itself will be done by probably March, and then we'll see how long the artist takes to get things moving. But we'll be approaching, a real publisher, like maybe Hay House or something, and we'll see how it goes. My agent is very optimistic, though.
Wow, man! So it'll be about a year now, going into March and April, and you have written 2 to 3 books.
Isn't that weird?
That's impressive.
And it really doesn't mean anything either. It doesn't have to mean anything.
It doesn't have to mean, but I think other people should use it as a tool to look at it and say, wow, if he can do it,
anybody can.
Anyone can.
And that's been happening. And then the other thing that has been happening along the way, and we don't always talk about this. We mentioned the clarity and insight stuff at the beginning, right? Sometimes we talk about how, hey, I do psychic readings and like, we mention it, but we don't really dive too deep into it. We're more in like the human experience.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about, well, what is that?
Yeah.
And how do we even talk about it as humans that are in this 3D experience, which is where I want to be. We want to be here in the 3D. A lot of people that get into spirituality want to like float away, and we've talked about this, but so why am I doing that? Then Simon Sinek, I think is his name. He always talks about, we'll start with why. Why are you doing something? Because that's the core of it. I'm not just doing psychic readings to do psychic readings. There has to be a point behind it. There has to be some
reason, some
theme, like with anything in life, right?
Yeah.
We need a reason on why we're doing it. Otherwise, we probably won't be motivated. Eventually it'll get stale. And, if there's not a lot of human connection going on, where there's some, that's how I keep going. But if there's not a lot of human connection going on, you just get kind of stuck and it gets tarry.
Yeah.
So how do we get around that?
Okay.
So for me, I think on one of the episodes, somebody said the thing you struggle with the most is the thing you're supposed to teach the world and help the world because you've gone through it, right?
Okay.
We learn through experience, right?
Yep.
So if you've been experiencing something and maybe you've struggled in it, but you've overcome it in the end, then that's something that you can now teach and share with others, right?
Agreed, yes.
Okay. So for me, I kind of thought about this and I jotted some things down, but I think my purpose is kind of to help forge meaningful human connection. And learning to help myself, I've learned that I can also use a lot of different tools to help other people forge meaningful human connection. And I'm passionate about helping people who are either, for me, it was struggling with self-love and self-worth and looking for a way to heal, both of these self-inflicted wounds that are usually from childhood and they arise for many different reasons. But a lot of us have self-worth issues. A lot of us have issues with our confidence. We're scared we're going to come off as narcissistic or something. And we always hold back and sometimes we get walked over, right?
Yes.
Doormatism, whatever you want to call it. So I'm interested in helping those people or people that are looking to like recondition, habits and that are in their head that are programmed to run a certain way. And if we're hesitant to change, we might not want to change those patterns. It's because it's what we're used to, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you ever notice that with yourself when you have a particular way in which you engage in a conversation with someone, or you're just like, why is this happening again? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. You don't have to think of an example.
Yeah, I don't really have an example, but
for me, it's family triggers, right?
Yeah.
You have a family member, you might interact with them the same way, and you're like, why am I acting this way? So maybe we can take a step back and see why I am engaging in a particular behavior and try to gain some insight from it, as opposed to either shaming ourselves for engaging in said behavior. Like, why did I just run and eat a cookie when I thought about working on this new project?
Yeah.
Like that's a pattern,
So it's facing it. And
trying to understand it.
Understand and uncover why you behave a certain way.
Mm-hmm. And then not be upset with yourself for doing it,
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you eat a cookie, it's just eating a cookie. You don't need to have a whole story around it.
Yeah. It's all about being self-aware. So like right now, if you can notice, I'm really trying to stand up.
I did notice. Straight. I was like, oh, that's too much work.
I've been this past 2 weeks, I've been trying to be really conscious of what I'm doing and how I'm sitting.
Yeah.
And my posture ever since Zach came on and shared his episode. If you haven't listened to it, please do. It's a great episode. It's a couple episodes ago, but ever since he came on, I've been trying to really focus on my posture and just
Yeah.
just be more, not just my posture too, just myself in general, being more self-aware of what I do.
Have you felt better?
Yeah.
With the
yeah.
posture?
I mean, it's been difficult, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like it takes a lot of core to sit up like this for an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel better, and I know my family has especially the males in our family have a history of back problems.
Oh shit. Yeah.
My grandfather, and my dad. So I've just been really self-aware recently because I don't want to go down that path when I'm 60 years old and have back problems.
And it's just like, it's very unnatural to sit like, it just, like Zach said, it's like a position of looking like you've just been defeated.
Yeah.
And,
like
there's no power here.
Like you look pathetic like that.
Right. Yeah. There's no power there. There's no confidence there. And again, that goes back to self-worth and stuff.
Yeah.
If you have a particular way your body's expressing yourself with usually your shoulders hunched over, you're protecting your heart.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get hurt. That's really what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's manifesting in your body in a particular way. Your patterns in your head come out in your body in some way.
Yeah.
And everything's connected. And that's what we've been learning on this,
I just feel more confident when I'm.
Yeah, because your body's like, oh, if I'm in this position, I am confident.
Yeah.
That's duh.
Exactly.
That's what the body.
Yeah.
The body has a language too, right? So and again, that's another thing I'm passionate about helping people with. And then, as far as the spirituality go, it's so, labels are weird, right?
Yes.
So this is the thing that, I go from being a human that works a corporate job that has a quote unquote normal life. I don't do any of the woo woo stuff, whatever you want to call it. Sure, I might think that there's something more, based on either my psychedelic experiences or just my general belief that like this can't be random, that kind of stuff. But I never really dove into it until the injury happened and I had that weird experience with the Bell House, and I'm like, okay, something's weird. And I don't talk about it on the show, but like I've had, I'll wake up at night and sometimes I'll see something and it's weird. It's weird. Like,
Yeah.
And for me, it's real. So like, I believe in it. And there's a few ways we can go about this conversation, but part of it's in labels, part of it's our belief system. And then the other part is about intuition and psychic. And there's a video I'll show when we get to that part, but let's start with like the human stuff, like labels.
Yep.
When I go from being Trey, the corporate person, to Trey, oh, I'm a psychic now. Like, what does that mean? Have things changed? Am I a different person now to you just because there's a different label? Are there new stigmas attached? How does that change the way you see somebody? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, it does, right? It's unfortunate. It's almost like, why couldn't you be both at the same time?
Yeah.
But I think, again, we've talked about this before. In society, you have roles. And you can't be the corporate person. You can't be the corporate Trey, and you can't be the psychedelic Trey.
It's hard to make it where you're both.
People look at you in corporate world and say,
yeah, and you have to have a way to express yourself to the world, and that means you usually get a label.
Yep.
And then, so some of the reactions, for me, none of my friends really believed in this stuff, and there are definitely some friends that I don't get to talk to as much anymore because I've shifted my friend group, sure.
Yeah.
But then when I go back to these older friends, I don't. Sometimes I don't know what to talk about.
Do you not relate to them?
I can, but it's like they'll ask, "What do you do?" And I'm sharing this because other people go through this when they're like, "I'm going to start Reiki healing. I'm going to start doing intuitive readings or psychic readings because this is real to me." But then if it's real to you and none of your other family members or friends believe in that, how does that affect you? So this is again why I'm sharing this. So I'll go back and I'll share what I'm doing, and most people either don't know how to respond. So we'll change the conversation pretty quick. Or B, their body language will be like, that's not real. And it's said through their body language usually. Yeah. They won't outwardly express it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the first thing is such a bad thing. Like, they just don't know how to respond.
That part's fine.
That's fine. But, I mean, the second one, I don't know, to me, it's like, if you don't believe it, okay. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't question you about it, and I wouldn't say why. Like, every single human being is different. We all believe in different things. And I don't know if they're putting you down about it or anything, but
No,
like, or it's just like, well, or they just have a different opinion, so they want to tell you their opinion.
And I think the main thing is there's no frame of reference.
Yeah.
There's no direct experience for them, like a direct experience I've had. I've had frame of reference experience that I can put into context, and I say, okay, this is real because I've experienced this.
Yeah.
So it's very real to me. But say a person that has not had that experience, and I come with, and I don't usually throw it at people, but they'll ask me what I'm doing, and I try not to, I guess, hide it. So I'll share a little bit. But if they don't have a frame of reference, then how are they supposed to have a conversation about it? You know?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for some people, though, it's just the belief is good enough for them. And to have that belief in something that's good enough for people. Some people, they have to actually see it to believe it, and that's understandable, too.
Yeah, no, it's totally. Dude,
yeah, I guess
I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Until you actually experienced it. So yeah, I just think it's a difficult conversation to have with people that don't necessarily believe in it or haven't experienced anything.
And so, say for me, I don't know if in their head they're thinking, "Well, Trey's crazy," or "Well, that's not real," and Trey clearly has lost his mind. I don't know if they're thinking those things. But when I see that body language, those ideas pop up in my head, right?
Yeah. And I think that's normal.
And so I think why I'm sharing this is like, well, you know, from my perspective, this isn't an easy thing to do. Like, it's not easy for me to be like, I'm doing this now because I want people to give me recognition for being a psychic. It's scary, dude. Yeah. It's scary to, tell people that, but B, also sit in front of a person, have no idea what's going to come through. And we'll talk about this a little more later, but I'm so vulnerable, and like I could be so scared because what if nothing comes through and then I look like an idiot, right? Yeah. You know? Yeah. It's scary.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, I guess that's part of your journey though, right?
Right.
It's being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is getting shared because I've talked to other people that have gone through this process, and they're like, yeah, my whole family kind of just like thought I was off my rocker. But I knew in my heart that this is what I was supposed to do. It felt right. You know, when something feels good, you're like, this is. It's
intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My intuition's clicking. So I feel like it's what I need to do. And when we are doing it on this journey, we feel alive. Like I haven't felt alive for a long time until all of this started happening.
And at the end of the day, that's what matters, right?
Yeah, we're here to live.
Yeah. So how does your family feel now?
I am not sure.
Not sure?
I'm pretty sure that my parents still haven't read the book, and that's fine. Yeah. But, you know, my grandmother's on board, and that's one person. That's one beam of support I have. Everyone who's come, and, well, the rest of my little brother actually is telling some of his friends I do psychic readings, and some of them are interested, and I might get readings from his friends, which is also cool. So it's not all bad, but I will say it's hard to hold that position, especially back in, I guess, when I went home for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. Because when you go home and you're with your family, right, we've talked about the roles, right? Yeah. And you think, well, now I have to go back into, for me, this is my experience. I have to go back, not have to, but I feel triggered to go back into, well, I'm now a child again. Mm-hmm. I'm no longer an adult.
Because you're going home?
That, and because, like, you know, your parents will talk to you a certain way. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And when they talk to you a certain way, it's almost like, well, have I grown up yet, or am I still a child? And it gets confusing. Yeah. For me, especially. Mm-hmm. Especially with my self-worth and, like, you know, self-love and all that other kind of stuff. It all gets activated, and it makes it tough. But I will say, the acceptance doesn't have to come from your family, right? We've talked to a lot of people. I made a lot of friends from this podcast. Yeah. I've found a lot of people in Atlanta that are doing the same kind of stuff I'm doing. I've met a lot of people through my work that I've become friends with. So you find the people that will support you, and we've talked about this too, right?
You surround yourself with that network of people that will support you. Yeah.
So, you know, we don't always have to go back and convince our family or our friends or everybody that, you know, what we're doing is right, because all that matters is if we know it's right, then we should do it.
Exactly. And it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I think the greatest explanation for what you're doing is just by doing it. And if people get curious enough, if you do it for a long time, and, you know, if, say I'm doing this still like 5 years from now, If somebody's curious enough and I've been doing something for 5 years, like clearly something's working,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise it wouldn't exist.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah. I think curiosity is our greatest asset here.
Absolutely.
In terms of belief systems, which is the other thing I wanted to talk about. So let's say your belief system, and we can start simple. Your belief system says, I can't run 5 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can't, right?
No. Yeah. The mind is a mind fuck.
Mm-hmm. Or it's like, I don't know how to use this Excel spreadsheet, so I'm going to go ask John.
Yeah.
That's their belief system.
Yep.
So they're like, how do you do this?
I
don't get it.
Yeah.
And then they don't learn it.
Yep.
So those are self-imposed limitations that we've talked about before. These also exist in like being quote unquote psychic. So for me, I had to kind of delete my old belief system as I can't connect with information that is cosmic or whatever. This web of information that exists, in my opinion.
That's what you felt before.
Before, I felt like I cannot connect to this web of information, right?
Okay.
I have no business being a psychic. You get the phony person syndrome where like, I'm not a psychic.
Well,
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Was this when you wanted to be one?
I don't know. I don't know if I ever wanted to be one.
Or
I don't
did you ever think about it? Like,
no, I didn't want to do this at all, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm doing it because it works.
Yeah. Because you've lived
still
it.
get super, like I have 5 appointments on this Sunday, and I'm a little terrified. I mean, I know it's going to work because in the moment it always comes through.
Yeah.
But leading up to the moment, you always still get a little nervous. You get a little antsy.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of the same with
It's
public
like anything,
speaking. Or,
like
you know.
athletic, and being in an athletic event or public speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. But for me, it's just like, well, I can't, it's just, I can't see it. I can't grab psychic information.
There's,
yeah. It's
not there.
It's a little different. So I had to rekindle, or whatever the word is, rekindle.
That sounds about right.
You're starting a fire? Why not? I had to re-engineer my belief system on like what is possible. So the way that, and this is most of the psychics I talk to, the way that they describe it and the way that I've come to understand it through my own intuition is just, if you believe you can access this information, and not from a narcissistic Trey is accessing it, more of like a, let's say, the earth is an ecosystem and I'm part of this ecosystem, much like a cell in my body is part of the greater whole, right?
Yep.
So this cell in my body can receive a message from my brain through electrical signals, whatever, and it can know what's going on up here, like say it's a white blood cell or whatever, and it needs to relocate and go do something else. So we're a part of the earth, right? I think we're all connected in some way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You can feel the magnetic field around your body. Like Ashley talked about, you ground into the earth because we are a part of it, and our body will go back to it and be repurposed.
Yeah.
So we're never really disconnected from it. So in theory, Trey is not getting this information. I'm just allowing myself to access information that's literally I'm connecting to through our vessels or whatever.
Is that information available to anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, again, I guess I can talk about it now. Eventually, I'm going to be doing an intuitive coaching position where I will teach people how to use intuition, how to get access to spirit, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be called spirit. It's just, I just want to call it like universal information that is accessible to anyone. Anyone.
Okay.
You can know anything, and you know it by feeling it. And part of that course will involve spirituality, part of whatever the word is, and part of it will involve the human part, which is moving past our patterns of I'm not worthy of this position. I'm not able to do this. We have to restructure those belief systems, right?
That's a big challenge.
It is a challenge, and it's up to the client, to do it. But I can at least provide the tools based on my own personal experience of what is working for me, what's not working for me, and everybody's different. So it's going to be personalized.
Yeah,
the way
it has to be.
You can be intuitive through smelling.
Yeah,
as weird as that sounds. It's all of our senses. Some people, I don't know if you've heard the words claircognizance, clairsentience, audience, which is like hearing. So like you can be intuitive, clairvoyance, which is seeing, so like some people can see spirit, some people can hear spirit, some people can smell a cigar of a dead person that used to smoke cigars, that kind of thing. That's clear. I don't know what the smelling one is called, but it's that kind of thing. So it has to be personalized, and that's what I've been kind of learning. And this is also why I haven't tried to rush this thing to market either.
Yeah.
I can do it if I have a client in front of me and I need to channel or whatever, or I need to see stuff through cards. I can do it, but I need to learn to teach it probably.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take time. You got to get it right.
Right.
You don't want to rush into it.
No, you definitely don't. So I think on the basis of restructuring belief systems, there's a little video I wanted to watch. And if you're listening to this, you can go on YouTube and watch this, but this is also going to be on our YouTube video that we post.
Yeah,
we're gonna try. We're gonna try to.
We'll try to edit it in there.
But this is when you see this, it makes a lot more sense. And this is a very scientific. What are dimensions, and what does it mean if there are higher dimensions? And if there are higher dimensions, what might that look like?
And this is a TED Talk.
Kind of. It's a
TED Ed.
Yeah, this is just neat. I don't know. You'll see it. It's called Flatland. And just you can Google Flatland Exploring Other Dimensions by Alex Rosenthal and George Zaidan, which is
Zaidan.
Those are the letters. And let's just play it.
We live in a three-dimensional world where everything has length, width, and height. But what if our world were two-dimensional? We would be squashed down to occupy a single plane of existence, geometrically speaking, of course. And what would that world look and feel like? This is the premise of Edwin Abbott's 1884 novella, Flatland. Flatland is a fun mathematical thought experiment that follows the trials and tribulations of a square exposed to the third dimension. But what is a dimension anyway? For our purposes, a dimension is a direction, which we can picture as a line. For our direction to be a dimension, it has to be at right angles to all other dimensions. So a one-dimensional space is just a line. A two-dimensional space is defined by two perpendicular lines, which describe a flat plane, like a piece of paper. And a three-dimensional space adds a third perpendicular line, which gives us height and the world we're familiar with. So what about 4 dimensions, and 5, and 11? Where do we put these new perpendicular lines? This is where Flatland can help us. Let's look at our square protagonist's world. Flatland is populated by geometric shapes ranging from isosceles triangles to equilateral triangles to squares, pentagons, hexagons, all the way up to circles. These shapes are all scurrying around a flat world, living their flat lives. They have a single eye on the front of their faces, and let's see what the world looks like from their perspective. What they see is essentially one dimension, a line. But in Abbott's Flatland, closer objects are brighter, and that's how they see depth. So a triangle looks different from a square, looks different from a circle, and so on. Their brains cannot comprehend the third dimension. In fact, they vehemently deny its existence because it's simply not part of their world or experience. But all they need, as it turns out, is a little boost. One day, a sphere shows up in Flatland to visit our square hero. Here's what it looks like when the sphere passes through Flatland from the square's perspective. And this blows his little square mind. Then, the sphere lifts the square into the third dimension, the height direction where no Flatlander has gone before, and shows him his world. From up here, the square can see everything. The shapes of buildings, all the precious gems hidden in the earth, and even the insides of his friends, which is probably pretty awkward. Once the hapless square comes to terms with the third dimension, he begs his host to help him visit the fourth and higher dimensions. But the sphere bristles at the mere suggestion of dimensions higher than 3 and exiles the square back to Flatland. Now, the sphere's indignation is understandable. The fourth dimension is very difficult to reconcile with our experience of the world. Short of being lifted into the fourth dimension by a visiting hypercube, we can't experience it. But we can get close. You'll recall that when the sphere first visited the second dimension, he looked like a series of circles that started as a point when he touched Flatland, grew bigger until he was halfway through, and then shrank smaller again. We can think of this visit as a series of 2D cross-sections of a 3D object. Well, we can do the same thing in the third dimension with a 4-dimensional object. Let's say that a hypersphere is the 4D equivalent of a 3D sphere. When the 4D object passes through the third dimension, it'll look something like this. Let's look at one more way of representing a four-dimensional object. Let's say we have a point, a zero-dimensional shape. Now we extend it out 1 inch, and we have a one-dimensional line segment. Extend the whole line segment by 1 inch, and we get a 2D square. Take the whole square and extend it out 1 inch, and we get a 3D cube. You can see where we're going with this. Take the whole cube and extend it out 1 inch, this time perpendicular to all 3 existing directions, and we get a 4D hypercube, also called a tesseract. For all we know, there could be four-dimensional life forms somewhere out there, occasionally poking their heads into our bustling 3D world and wondering what all the fuss is about. In fact, there could be whole other four-dimensional worlds beyond our detection, hidden from us forever by the nature of our perception. Doesn't that blow your little spherical mind?
So again, the video really helps.
Yeah,
if
you
see
need
it.
to.
I would say
yeah.
definitely go and watch it. How do you? I'm not going to talk yet. How do you feel about that? What does that make you think?
It's a lot.
It is.
Really.
Yeah.
The whole idea.
Doesn't it make sense though?
It makes sense. The whole idea of there's some sort of fourth dimension out here.
Yeah.
Even further than that. Right?
Oh yeah. I bet.
Fifth, sixth, seventh.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some sort of other thing living with us.
Could be.
Could be.
So, we can see, we're seeing in 2 dimensions, right? Me and you, we're viewing things in 2 dimensions, and light is giving us the perspective of, distance and, I guess the way something's shaded.
And looks.
Yeah. Like I can tell this is 3. I see this in a 2-dimensional, we're pointing at stuff, but I'm pointing at this thing and I can tell it's 2-dimensional, or like the water, we're so used to it, we don't even notice that we're actually looking at stuff in 2D until we grab it and we add that extra dimension to it.
Yeah.
So the way I do it is say that we have a shadow, right? And like the sun casts a shadow on the ground, and that shadow is 2 dimensions, right?
Yep.
So that 2-dimensional shadow could be in a 2-dimensional world. And in the same way, the tesseract thing they talked about, remember when they spread the cube out, it's called a tesseract?
Yeah.
So a tesseract is actually just a shadow of what a 4-dimensional thing would look like in the 3D. So think about that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what 4D is, nor should I know, because I am in a 3D experience, right? But for me and on this journey and my logical scientific mind, I'm like, I don't being psychic and spirituality and energy healing, all that stuff. I think part of it comes from a higher plane. And I can feel energy, and I don't really know how to describe that, but I think maybe that energy that I feel is a fourth dimensional.
4D.
Right. I think it's 4D.
Something else out there.
Either that, or here's the other thing that I read a lot in all the books that some of them I read, is that say that when we, for instance, play a video game, right? Mm-hmm. We're jumping full into that character's in 2D, we can get lost in it, right? Mm-hmm. We get lost in that character. What if we were 4-dimensional beings, or 5, or whatever it is, and we're like, I want to go play 3D, and I'm going to, get lost in it and forget that I'm actually bigger than this 3D thing, right?
Yeah.
So we forget that, we have access to higher dimensions because maybe we were bored or something or whatever it was, but then we come down here and then I guess we see what we can do, based on emotional input, which emotions I think might come from higher planes too. I'm not sure, but emotions come from the soul, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's kind of our compass. That's why my 3rd book's called The Alchemist Compass too.
Oh, makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So we don't have to spin this in a spiritual way. We don't have to call it spirituality. We can just call it multidimensional living, whatever you want to name it. And I don't think having these discussions is too out there.
No, it's not.
Because we don't know.
Yeah.
And quantum physics is like slowly proving how much we don't know.
Did you listen to Elon Musk and Joe Rogan?
I heard it for a second when he started talking about turning humans into robots or whatever. I was like, all right.
Well, he does talk about like they did talk a little bit about, are we living in a simulation?
Yeah, and we don't know that either. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Like just like I'm playing a video game, I get lost in that character. Maybe they're playing a video game. This is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't mean it's good or bad. It means that maybe I could be an ultimate awesome badass in this experience, and why not just do it?
Yeah, that's exciting though. Just to think about this, that there's something else out there.
Mm-hmm. And for me, like it gets validated. So let's jump back into the psychic thing again. Is like I think we all have access to the unlimited database of information. Some people call it the Akashic Records.
Okay.
And listeners might have heard of that. There's a book by Edgar Casey on the Akashic Records. There's also an audiobook. I think it's Edgar Casey on the Akashic Records. And it's really good in terms of basically there's a higher dimensional library, whatever you want to call it, and you can get access to whatever you want to look at in there. And some people can do it somehow, whenever they have a client come in, they're like, all right, what's wrong with this person? And then Edgar Casey was a really well-known psychic, and he would basically diagnose them, and I think he was like 97% accurate.
So he would just have all this information. He would have access to this information.
He would lay on a couch and he would breathe deeply and still his mind. And then he would like kind of, I guess, astral project or leave his body and go get the information. Not go get, he would just intuitively access.
He would retrieve it.
Yeah.
And bring it back.
Mm-hmm. And he would help people. And, in my first psychic reading that I did, the psychic sitting across from me made me do it. He's like, you can do this too, and I'm going to make you do it right now. You're going to read me. And I'm like, okay. And I'm back in like when I'm still living in the basement. I think my hand might just be getting close to healing right now. Mm-hmm. And I might have written a little bit of the book, but like, nothing's really moving yet. So let's say at this point, my belief system of what is possible is like, well, if he's doing it for me, who's to say I can't do it for him? And I wasn't really confident in it. I wasn't egotistic about it. I didn't think I would be able to do it at all, honestly. Mm-hmm. I just thought I would sit there and nothing would happen. So then I sat there and I closed my eyes and I just started saying what I was hearing. I said, and I remember it vividly because it was my first experience, obviously. And we always remember those emotional experiences in the beginning. And I said, it feels like you're looking for something. No, it's someone. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, it's a woman. He's like, yes. And then I saw an image of China in my head, and I was like, well, this is going to be stupid, but I feel like that person's in China. He's like, yeah, she is. And then I was like, well, he didn't tell me this all up front. He was just like, okay, keep going. And I was like, okay. And then I see like a treasure chest, and it's on this island with these coconut trees. And that was all I did for the reading because I was just like, well, what was that about? And then he told me his ex-wife moved to China, and he was going to have to go over there to see her. And then when he was over there, there's an island he was visiting to get some form of inheritance.
And you didn't know any of this?
No. And I sat there. And when you experience something unbelievable like that, your first inclination is to immediately go like, okay, well, what's the logical reason on why I could do that?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way I got lucky.
Especially your first time, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, that was just coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But then like he left for a month and he went to China to go do his stuff, and then I don't know, and this is without the cards. This is just me closing my eyes and listening, and it comes to me in imagery. I'll see pictures or I'll see beings or stuff, and I don't think I'm creating it. You know when you get an idea and you don't know where it came from.
Mm-hmm. It just happens.
That's what it is. But we're in the meditative state of mind where our mind is more blank. So we're mostly just in our body breathing, right? And if we think of the brain as like a radio antenna to a higher dimension, whatever you want to call it, then you can receive information. And it comes to you in the way that will be most apt for you to understand it. And for me, that's imagery and sometimes words. The other notable experience I've had is when I didn't have my cards one time, and this woman wanted a reading, and I gave her one. I closed my eyes and I saw her, and I said, "You feel very cold, like you're surrounded by ice, and I see you stuck in ice, and you can't get out." And she told me, she basically started crying after that and said, "I recently started using ice again, which is apparently a type of meth." And she'd just become addicted to it again, and after not doing it for so long. And just like, it's so interesting how that comes. And, you know, if I don't have, and this comes through multiple, so I've given like probably close to 100 readings at this point.
Okay.
And I would say about 90% of them, information comes through. I don't, you know, sometimes it's vague, sometimes it's very clear. But I don't know how I know it. I don't really know how it works in terms of how Trey is doing it. But I guess, understand how, like, if you're part of a greater wholeness of a universe and we all have access to this information that maybe exists in a higher plane, and maybe our brains are kind of antennas in some way that we just don't think about because we can't see radio waves, right? So who's to say where that beam of, you know, where am I getting ideas from? You know,
or are you just being used as a tool for this? Or
I don't know.
Yeah.
I you know, and I think that's part of the gracefulness in this is accepting the fact that I don't know. I can do it, and I can trust that it works, but I don't know exactly how it works.
I don't think you need to, though.
Right.
Right.
But that's where the trust comes in, because our logical brain wants to know how. It wants to know how it works.
Part. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the tricky part.
And that's why that's why I would call it sometimes scary when I'm doing a reading, or I get a little nervous because I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
I have to trust it.
How long did it take you to realize I can do this? I mean, you had your first reading, but
honestly, some days I still don't think I can do it.
Don't think you just do it.
Even with all the evidence, it's like, you know, I'm a self-doubter. So like my brain's like, this isn't real. Like it wants to say that and part of the reason our brains, I think, do this is when we experience some fantastical event. And somebody told me this once, when you experience something paranormal or out there, or like you see a chair move by itself, whatever it is, somebody told me that the other day, you want to rationally explain it away, because otherwise it's going to mess with your worldview. If you say the world is 3D and material and there's nothing else, and then something unexplainable happens, what do we do with that? What bucket do we put it in our brain?
Did you see that story recently in Atlanta?
No.
There was this mother, she lost her son when he was a teenager. I think it was in high school a couple of years ago. Or he's like 21. And he overdosed on heroin, which is a big problem these days. But he overdosed on heroin. And this was a couple of years ago. But recently, I think like last week, she was sitting upstairs in her bedroom with her daughter, and they were watching TV. And she got a notification on her Nest camera, which is downstairs in her kitchen. And the Nest camera, you can clearly see it. You'll have to Google it.
Yeah.
It's a ghost of her dead son. And it's clear in the camera. And the camera caught it. Like, hey, there's movement downstairs. I have one, and I know.
Getting chills.
Like, yeah, and there's a clear picture of her son in this ghost form. And she wasn't scared. She was just like, I think he came to let me know he's okay. And yeah, I mean, it's clear as anything. There's a picture of him, and you're like, wow, that's...
Yeah. And as far as I'm concerned, that's real.
Yeah.
It's real. You know, it's something that happened, and it's caught on camera, and there's no reason for her to randomly, let's fabricate this.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about my dead son, which is going to bring up a lot of emotional baggage. Like, no one's going to make that up. Like, something clearly happened.
Yeah.
And I think the more open, you know, we as a society get to this kind of stuff, the more interesting things could happen.
Yeah.
But I will say, you know, sometimes when I'm meditating, I'm sitting there, I'll be like, I hope I don't open my eyes and see a spirit. Because, like, it'll make you jump.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it'll make you jump. So yeah, it's interesting to talk about, like, hey, I hope we're more open to it in the future. And do you think there's people that take advantage of it, and that...
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the reasons why people don't believe in it as much. I mean, you drive. You drive by these like hole in the wall psychic reading places, and they just look kind of. Then they look like they're just trying to take your money.
So let me explain it this way.
Yeah.
And I'll first of all say, just how you can have scammers in any type of industry, you can have scammers as psychics. Yeah. 100%. Which leads us to, thank God there are reviews today. Mm-hmm. You can go on Yelp. You can look at the reviews of the psychic place, and you can make sure it's legit. Yelp is really, really hard to get good reviews on because they delete like half of them.
Yeah.
I've noticed for my own business, but I think because of reviews now, it's going to make it a little harder for, you know, those types of psychics to come on and I guess screw you over. But also, like, you can, I don't know, at this point I've found that you can find people who trust a psychic and be like, I can recommend you to one.
Yeah.
You can usually find something, especially if you're in Atlanta or like any big city in California or New York. Like, big cities are going to have them, and you just have to, you know, kind of look around and do your due diligence.
That's good.
But the thing I was going to explain is, so I guess this is probably longer than a 15-minute conversation, but can you accept that, like, we're conduits? The way I express myself is Trey Jackson. The way you express yourself is John Nichols. We have say that when we come into this 3D experience, we don't have patterns, we don't have habits, we don't have a personality, we don't have any of that really, unless we get it from our parents in the womb, you know? So everything we get is shaped. So in the stages of age 0 to 6, we're downloading how to live, basically, from observing our reality around us. We're in delta brainwaves.
Okay.
When you're in delta, which you get pretty close to when you're in meditation, which is why they recommend meditation, but you're basically just having the experience of living, and you're not attaching an ego or personality to it, right?
Yep.
So then around 7 to 12, you start to be like, okay, now that I've observed how a human functions and all of the programs I need to, you know, run, to walk, to eat, to have conversations with people, I've downloaded how that works, and now I can start to kind of have a personality a little bit, because I can be in my head a little bit more, because my body can go on autopilot. It's the same reason why when we first start driving a car, we're hyper aware of everything, but then later on, our body kind of autopilot drives the car, and we can be in our head thinking about shit.
Yeah.
You know? So it's the same kind of thing.
Okay.
So when I say we are a conduit, I'm saying we have developed personalities that we can change. We can totally change the shape of our conduit based on, you know, healing past traumas, healing narcissistic traits, whatever it is that no longer serve us. We can mold and shape this person, this conduit that we are, into the best version of ourselves. So I'm talking about this because there are some psychics that have a lot of emotional baggage or a lot of narcissistic traits, or like they're doing it to get attention, or they're doing it because they like telling people how they need to live.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, they might be connecting to spirit,
But that's not.
but spirit, whatever you want to call it, sends you information. That information might come clean as a whistle, but when it hits your conduit, it gets filtered through the way your personality is set up. So then you're going to transmit that information you got, while it might be true, in a way that is narcissistic, or in a way that is controlling.
Yeah.
You know? It's going to be translated whatever the way your person is set up.
How do you free yourself, though, from that? And just be able to...
Channel, right?
Yeah.
You have to... Well, one, you have to know what it's like to not have thoughts, know what it's like to not be in your person. And I've talked about it. Ashley talked about it when she came on. You know, she said she just took a day off.
Yeah.
She didn't have to be anybody. And that's kind of how she started doing it. She developed a baseline of what it's like to not be anybody. So you kind of have to develop a baseline, and also, you know, heal emotional wounds that you might be carrying, so that that filter that you're channeling information from isn't transmitting those emotional wounds to the person in front of you too. There's a lot of responsibility involved in like being a psychic, whether, you know, in terms of making sure you're clean and you're going to be able to help people.
So all these things you do daily, meditation.
Being present. When you're doing something, just do it. Just be in the moment.
Those are helping you.
Mm-hmm. I would say I get a lot of my hits on intuition when I'm running, and I don't listen to music. I just run and I feel my body. So I'm in my body. It's like, okay, I'm grounded.
Yeah.
When something's grounded, then it can receive information very clearly. If we're in our head, then it's going to get all mangled with whatever thoughts we have going on too. So as a psychic, as a good channeler, you have to be in your body, and you have to be able to receive the information without a bunch of wishy-washy thoughts going on of my preconceptions of what the person sitting in front of me is. You know, if I get somebody in front of me who's like overweight and is winded,
Yeah.
I've already developed a few preconceptions about them.
So it's getting rid
If
of
I'm
that
not
bias.
We have to get rid of the preconceptions. We have to get rid of thinking that I already know anything about this person and leave it as a blank slate and let whatever comes through come through with no bias. And to get the no bias, we have to get out of our mind, which means we have to do the meditation to get grounded, have a baseline, right?
That all makes sense now.
Yeah.
I mean, like it truly does. And it's such a simple concept too, though. But like, that's just, I think that can relate to just in general, just general life.
Yeah. And you don't have
Like
to go be a psychic.
Yeah.
You know?
Like freeing yourself of bias from other, just in day-to-day activities.
Judgments, comparisons.
Clearing your mind.
Mm-hmm. There's this course called Wise Mind, and there's also this therapy called I don't want to mispronounce it, but it's DBT therapy, and it's about getting in your body so that you can be present and see what your mind is doing, so you can let go of the stuff that's not really serving you.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the way you just explained this all, I mean, I feel like that means this message needs to be shared more.
Yeah.
There's people. I mean, admittedly myself, like until we had this conversation, I wasn't aware of all that was in it and what exactly how you were thinking and how you do what you do.
Yeah, you got to think of it as a receiver.
Yeah, but it makes sense when you explain it the way you just did.
Yeah, and so the other part of it is anything that you pick up can be an extension of yourself.
Okay.
So if I picked up this rock, which is labradorite, and I said, this helps me have better intuition, not to mention it's, this is good for like transmitting electrical signals anyways, this kind of material. Now this is helping me because I set the intention. I said, this is helping me. Now it's part of me. Why not? Because we're part of the earth.
Yeah.
So like, why can't I make other things be part of me? In the same way that I can say, okay, this person sitting in front of me is sitting there, and I want these cards to show me what has happened to them in like the past 6 months.
Okay.
And then I'm not going to read you on the podcast, but I would pull out some cards, and whatever way they come out in is usually exactly what the person in front of me has experienced in the last 6 months. And they can also see it in the cards. They see it.
Is there a reason why we can't do it here?
I don't know what's going to come up. We could.
Why not?
There's a cat in the way, though.
Milo.
Hey, bud. Hey. Maybe he doesn't want it to happen. So, but can you just pretend that this is an extension of me and you right now.
Okay.
And this is going to show you what may have been happening in the past 6 months. And we're not going to do a legit reading. But I will say, when you're looking at these, kind of wonder about what they might be saying to you.
Okay.
I hate that I have to squeeze these. So, what is that back in July? So there's each card. Okay, so the thing with the tarot cards is a lot of people say that one card means a particular thing, and I don't really jump into that realm. I understand the cards. I understand that wands are about creativity and creating with masculine energy. These are Arcana cards, which just carry a specific type of energy. So this is saying that, I guess, what is this? That's December, November, blah, blah, blah. Is this July? That's 6, right? Have you split the months in half? Why is that so hard?
I can't go backwards.
July. Can't go backwards in life. July, August, September, October, November, December. Way easier.
Yes.
Okay.
Why are we trying to count backwards?
So it looks like I don't know. It looks like you were doing like a lot of work, or like a lot of things were happening for you back in July, and then some illusions came up.
They were.
I don't know.
Where I work, July is the fiscal year ending.
Yeah, very busy. So like
Busy, yeah.
a want. This means like you had a lot of stuff on your mind, and it was really hard to stay grounded. It was very hard to be on the ground for you. You're very up in the air, very very in the headspace.
Makes sense.
And then the moon talks about maybe giving too much into illusions, living in the mind too much, wondering what might be happening to you. The cups this is about not being willing to take action. I'm away from action too much. I'm not engaging in stuff. I'm very I'm quiet and a little reserved, but I'm very observant. I'm seeing everything that is happening, but I'm not really willing to take a participatory stance in much of anything at this point.
Okay.
August, September, October. The Hanging Man is about taking a new perspective. It's about seeing things from a different way. So, I mean, that could be really any event in your life that just makes you step back and be like, I've always thought about this thing from this perspective, but now that I'm upside down and I see it this way, I can kind of change that belief system. So the Hanging Man is really about changing a particular belief system.
Okay.
This one is about thinking that you have gotten a victory. This is the, what is this? Five of Swords. Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, look, everybody, I won. But then like in the background, there's all these casualties that you didn't really notice along the way. People that you may have hurt or not taken consideration of in something that happened. Basically, it's not selfish, but there was some kind of dishonesty that happened where some other people were disregarded, and their feelings weren't taken into full account. That's kind of the energy of that card. And then this last one, Six of Wands, it's basically saying whatever you've been working on, whatever you've been starting, it's starting to take off and you're starting to get some recognition for it. But yeah, there's a potential that the recognition could become more important than the actual thing that you're doing. So it's important to like watch why you're doing something. Starting with why is really important at this stage, because what you've been working on is starting to take off, and we don't want to get sucked into I'm doing this because I'm getting so much recognition. I want to be doing this because I'm doing it.
Gotta remind yourself. Stay grounded.
So that's kind of like the energy of these cards, and it's a little different, obviously, behind a mic.
Yeah.
But
no, that makes sense.
No card has to have a specific meaning, and if the person in front of me is also engaging in this, they're seeing what they need to see.
Okay, so they can take their own own perception of each card. Right,
and like somebody might say, like you said, I had this much going on at this time because it's the end of the fiscal year, and that's why I was in my head so much. Yeah. That makes sense. So like they match up the puzzle to whatever's happening in their life, or I might see something and say it, and they're like, "Yep, that's exactly what happened."
So then when you go through each card, then what do you do?
Then that's the past,
and you talk about each card.
Yeah, and honestly, I only do the past stuff to kind of like build a foundation of trust.
Okay.
Because if I can't, you're not going to trust what I'm saying about the future, really, or maybe even the present, if you don't have some kind of foundation of, can I trust this person in front of me?
So it kind of tells the story for the past 6 months and builds that trust within that story.
And that's just my method of how I've had to figure it out, because at first I was just like, here are the cards, I don't know. And I had to start to trust it. And I eventually want to do the readings without the cards. But if I'm doing 15-minute readings, which is what I mostly do at these psychic fairs. It's changing now because I'm actually getting clients for like hour-long readings. So I do a lot more channeling than just the card stuff. I'm listening and transmitting. But for shorter readings, cards are easy because I can just see what's happening. I can tell the client, and usually they're like, "Yep, that's what happened. How do we move forward?" And then I'll help them. And I've noticed, we talk a lot about coincidences in the universe giving you what you need. I've noticed a lot of the clients that come to me had a lot of the same issues I had in terms of self-love, self-worth. And since I've gone through it, I can speak to it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm getting the types of clients that are aligned with my conduit, that are aligned with my database of brain that can explain things to them that's going to help them. I've noticed that.
Yeah. So it's all about, not all about, but you look at the past, you look at the present, and then you look at the future.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of psychics that, look, I'm just gonna, like Jamie Butler, who's based in Atlanta, she can pretty much just be like, hey, I got like 12 spirits here, and here's what they're saying, and then they'll talk, and I'm gonna be like, oh, that's my grandfather, he was talking about that, okay. And, I mean, she's the realest of the real. If you want the real deal with a psychic, just go to jamiebutlermedium.com. Not to demote myself, but somebody that's been doing it, since she was literally a child. Like, she had imaginary friends, but like they clearly weren't.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Something else, okay.
Yeah, but I hope we kind of have gotten, I guess, a basic understanding about how this, I don't really know how it works, but this is my own experience of coming into this. And I don't know if that's relayed enough, especially to new people that are going through like spiritual awakenings and like trying to be intuitive, trying to learn how to listen to their heart and like hear what's happening. We have to learn to have no mind. We have to learn to turn off our brain.
The way that you explained it today makes perfect sense, and it's logical, really.
Yeah.
And I think people that don't believe in it or that are hesitant think, they're just crazy and there's no logical way behind it. But if you sit and listen to this, or you sit and have a conversation with you quickly learn that it's not just a bunch of like this guy's not crazy. There's logic behind it.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that.
I thought it was important, and honestly, it's what I've been struggling with lately.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if I've been struggling with it, that means other people are probably struggling with this kind of thing too. Either that, or they're curious about it, and they're like, "What does being a psychic mean? What does that mean?"
I was always curious about it too.
And I like the Flatland thing because I think it just puts a very like logical perspective on maybe we don't know what exists
know what's
beyond
out there.
this.
Yeah.
And I think that, and you hear this quote a lot, but I think the second we decide that we've learned and we know everything,
it's terrible.
Then that we've stopped learning.
Yeah.
Then we've stopped living, and then why?
Yeah. What's the point?
So I think we got to be open to pretty much anything. Stay curious. I think that's probably the most important thing. Always be curious. Don't ever think you know it. Don't ever think you have it figured out. Just always try to be in the process, be living it, and let it happen. And then through the experience of letting that thing happen, you build a trust with it. You build a faith that it's going to work. Your intuition, whatever it is, and you start with small things. Like I feel good about, wearing this shirt today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Can't explain it, but I want to wear this color today. So I'm going to wear it. And I'm not going to overthink what I'm going to wear or picking food on the menu like Moshe talked about.
Yeah.
Just picking it and go with it.
Just go with it.
Because it's going to be right.
Don't think,
And if you start with these little things, and you can even play psychic games, you can, remember when I was doing the intuitive betting? That's kind of like the same thing. You put numbers down on these pieces of paper, put them in a hat, and then pick one out and not guess, feel what it is. I've done that a lot, and you miss a lot at first because you're trying to get it right, as opposed to having a less mind and just listening and feeling 3 or whatever it is, So there are games and ways you can train this in small increments to kind of start to take advantage of it. And eventually you'll have to work on your own stuff, like emotionally or whatever it is, because those are blocks and we have to get through that. Like I said, we're all a conduit. So we want to be clear conduits and make sure we're not filtering shitty stuff to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We're not saying there's no way I can do this. Well, what if that's just because my pattern says there's no way I can do this,
Yeah, clear the filter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So all this kind of what we all talked about today and the different topics, is this kind of the stuff that you'll be teaching in your course?
Yeah, I think it'll be in the course.
You want to?
And we're still molding and shaping it, obviously. Yeah. But I think, it's going to be, I'm going to call the course probably the Alchemist Compass, just to go in line with the book. But if there was another word for the course, I think I would call it grounded spirituality, because I want you to be grounded in your body, in the 3D, being human. Yeah. And not the way my teacher, who's Simone Wright, I think I've mentioned her a few times, but I took probably a 10-week course with her on learning how to be intuitive and learning how to connect. And she told me the best way to do it is just to remember that this isn't a big deal. The fact that you can transmit information is not a big deal. It's just like turning on an electrical circuit and having it run. And when you can start doing that, your ego is not going to try to take advantage of it and be like, look at me, look what I can do. Mm-hmm. That won't happen. And at the same time, you'll trust it because it's just, I'm flipping the switch. And what the second you take the fantasticalness away from it, like I don't have to think about if I turn on the light switch, the light's going to come on, because I understand that it'll work. I trust it. Mm-hmm. And I don't say like, oh my gosh, look, let there be light. I don't have that moment of like, oh my gosh, a psychic reading worked. Holy moly. Like I don't have to like do that. And the second you start grounding it and making it more normal, the more consistent it will be.
It's like riding a bike.
Does that make sense, though?
Yeah, it makes sense. Just happens eventually.
Yeah.
It all makes sense.
And we might do some more episodes on this stuff.
Yeah, this is good, man.
I think that was a brief overview of what's going on. And, the course is going to be happening, I would say, by summer. I'll be doing some trials, and we'll promote that on the Instagram and our newsletter. Oh, our newsletter is going to be coming out soon.
Newsletter, okay.
Yeah, it's going to be, the newsletter is going to be called The Alchemist Compass with Trey Jackson. And I don't know, maybe you can get on there too. Who knows? But, we'll talk about the podcast. We'll talk about things that are coming up. We'll talk about promotions. We'll talk about things you could win, things you can get involved in. You could win free readings. You could win a session, a free session.
Like yeah.
Discounted, trial course for, the intuition course that's going to be happening later on too. We'll have a lot going on, and updates on what's happening with me, the books, all that kind of thing. I think it'll be once a month. We'll send out the newsletter once a month, and the blog's also going to be starting up again probably in the next couple months too.
The video blogs, or the
video blogs.
Yeah. I like those.
They'll be coming back.
Those, yeah.
I just wanted to, make sure.
Well, you took some time for yourself and figure out what's going on.
And remember what I said in the beginning, like, I'm not creating this intuition course because I don't really know how it looks yet. And in the same way, I think I rushed things with the blog because I was like, got to start it, got to do it. But I didn't really know what it was yet, right?
Yeah. I mean,
But now we felt into it.
Yeah, you did what you thought at that time. And then you decided, hey, I'm going to take a little bit of break because I want to figure out what's going on, like what I need to do. And you've done so much here in the last couple of months and the last year. So, yeah, I think it's all starting to come together now, and I'm excited for the future.
Yeah, man. Milo is too.
Milo is too. Milo's just chilling.
If you watch the YouTube video, there's a cat on the table. He's pretty good looking. I think that's it for this episode.
Yeah.
So this, and we never talk about this, but the second season will probably have about 13 or 14 episodes.
Similar to the first, yeah.
Well, and then we'll take a month or two break, and then we'll come back. We'll be a little more forward about it though, because we kind of just disappeared, didn't tell anyone last time.
Yeah, that's true.
So we will let you know, listeners, if we are going to be going off for a little bit or coming back. But I think that's it. I think we're good.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah,
All
my
right.
intuition says we're done.
Yes, it does.
Free minds out.
Bye.